Hey there, and welcome to StoryHouse. Today, we're diving headfirst into the epic tale of the nuclear bomb, and of course, its main man, J. Robert Oppenheimer. This isn't your run-of-the-mill movie plot. No, it's a lot more. We're uncovering the behind-the-scenes details that the big screen left out. If you're into history, crazy about science, or just love a good life story, you're going to want to stick around for this one. Please sit back, get comfy, and let's start. When it comes to the inventor of the atomic bomb, who comes to mind? I suspect most people would instinctively think of the formula: energy equals mass times the speed of light squared. And then remember the person who is the best known scientist in the eyes of the world, Albert Einstein. Indeed, Einstein's energy conversion formula is the principle behind the creation of the atomic bomb. This formula is so intuitive that anyone who has studied middle school mathematics can instantly understand its meaning. Mass can be converted into astonishing energy, which is the source of the destructive power of the atomic bomb. However, if we conclude that Einstein made the atomic bomb possible, we oversimplify the matter. From the inception of this formula to the creation of the atomic bomb, several decades passed, during which the largest war in human history occurred. The birth of the nuclear bomb was less due to scientists than it was to the brutal confrontation between the world's major powers. Today, let's discuss the story of the birth of the atomic bomb, starting with the energy equals mass times the speed of light squared equation. This conversion formula was conceived in 1905, but related research stalled for the next 28 years because no specific engineering technology was available to realize this conversion. Even Einstein himself believed that, given the engineering capabilities of the early 20th century, releasing these energies from matter was an impossibility. For a long time, this formula was merely a byproduct of the special relativity theory. Our tale begins with Leo Szilard, a physicist from Budapest, Hungary. After World War I, Szilard went to Germany to further his studies at the Berlin Institute of Technology, where he obtained a doctorate degree in physics in 1922. He then taught at the University of Berlin for over a decade until 1933, when the political landscape took a dire turn with Hitler's appointment as the Chancellor of Germany. Being of Jewish descent, Szilard took the bold and wise decision to flee to London. Interestingly, Szilard didn't make this journey alone. He convinced his old friend, the esteemed Albert Einstein, to refrain from returning to Germany while Einstein was visiting the United States. The Nazi Party had just won the election, and Einstein, having completed his lecture tour, was about to re-enter Germany when Szilard warned him. Just a few days after this warning, Einstein discovered that his home had been raided by the Nazis. This led Einstein to return to Antwerp and renounce his German citizenship at the German embassy in Belgium. Later events showcased Szilard's foresight. Beyond rescuing Einstein, Szilard played a significant role in the birth of the atomic bomb. At 1933, he read an article about the discovery of a new particle, the neutron, by British scientists. He saw the potential for a positive feedback system where bombarding an atomic nucleus with neutrons could cause the nucleus to split and release more neutrons, resulting in a chain reaction, the basic concept of an atomic bomb. This was still purely theoretical at the time, with no experiments conducted yet. Fast forward to 1938, with Europe teetering on the brink of war as Hitler annexed Austria. A German scientist, Otto Hahn, and his team stumbled upon nuclear fission. Their work found that the product's mass was less than the original mass. After ruling out errors, nuclear fission seemed the only plausible explanation. Unable to find an immediate answer, Hahn reached out to another scientist, Lise Meitner, a student of Max Planck. If you are not familiar with the history of science, just remember that Planck is the founder of quantum mechanics and is basically a grandmaster of physics. Hahn dropped a bombshell. We've stumbled upon a splitting phenomenon. Is it possible that U-239 has split into barium and tantalum? Keen to hear your thoughts. This message was for Lise Meitner. a scientist with 48 Nobel Prize nominations under her belt. Upon visiting the U.S. in 1946, the media dubbed her the mother of the atomic bomb. Meitner, interpreting the letter, realized that the missing mass had turned into energy. She estimated that each nuclear fission event could unleash 200 million electron volts of energy. This was a game changer, restarting long stagnant wheels. When she relayed her insights to Niels Bohr, his reaction was simply, we've been so foolish. Wait a moment. The mentioned names were all either German or researchers in Germany. So why didn't Germany create the atomic bomb first? The answer is quite simple. Except for Hahn, several others, including Einstein and Meitner, were Jewish, or were descendants or relatives of Jews. Szilard, who had fled early, was also Jewish. Therefore, the scientists from the fascist camp had to escape. So, although German scientists were the first to consider nuclear energy, it was the Americans who first produced results. This is indeed ironic. In early 1939, Bohr visited the United States and gave an academic lecture in Washington, discussing the latest developments in nuclear fission research. About 50 scientists attended the lecture, most from nearby Johns Hopkins University. The lecture, which took place in the morning, astonished everyone. Some scientists hurried back to their laboratories in the afternoon and conducted nuclear fission experiments overnight, subsequently validating the findings. The rest of the scientists were from Columbia University in New York. They were a bit far away, so they confirmed the results the next day. However, another significant figure was there Enrico Fermi, an Italian physicist who had won the Nobel Prize in Physics the previous year for his research on neutron radiation. But why was an Italian in New York? Fermi had escaped Italy the year before because his wife was of Jewish descent. It's worth noting that Fermi later made significant contributions to the Manhattan Project. Given that the plan originated from Germany, American physicists soon realized that Germany would likely be the first to produce this devastating weapon. This was unacceptable, and it would undoubtedly be a catastrophe for human civilization. Someone had to step in to prevent it. How to avoid it? It was nearly impossible to stop the Germans from developing the weapon because they first discovered the relevant theories, which were openly published then. If the Germans wanted to make this new weapon, no one could stop them. So the only method was to beat the Germans at their own game and produce this new weapon first. This task could only be accomplished by the United States, so someone had to persuade the American president. That someone was the far-sighted Szilard. On August 2, 1939, Szilard and his old schoolmate Eugene Wigner visited Einstein. Wigner, also of Hungarian descent, was initially conducting research in Germany. But he too was Jewish, and therefore had to flee from the scientists in the fascist camp. After their discussion, the three decided that Einstein should write a letter to President Roosevelt, explaining the seriousness of the matter and requesting full government support. Actually, there was a fourth participant that evening. Because neither Szilard nor Wigner could drive, they temporarily recruited a young man from their institute to serve as a driver. This young man was Edward Teller, a Hungarian-born Jewish nuclear physicist. Teller was involved in the plan from then on. Teller's reputation isn't great, but all you need to remember is his nickname, the father of the hydrogen bomb. These four gathered at Einstein's home and drafted a letter to President Roosevelt. They described a terrifying prospect within the letter, a new type of bomb that, if developed by Germany first, could annihilate a major American city with a single blast. The loss would be unthinkable. To prevent such a nightmare from becoming a reality, they implored the American government to commit resources to develop the atomic bomb first. With Einstein, a world-renowned scientist, leading the effort, one might expect this letter to convince President Roosevelt. However, the situation was more complex. As World War II was looming with Hitler's imminent attack on Poland in August 1939, four key figures found themselves with a prophetic letter destined for President Roosevelt. The problem was, none of them had a direct line to the president. Posting the letter was an option, but it would probably yield nothing more than a courtesy response from a secretary. Szilard remembered an influential friend, Alexander Sachs. Sachs, a successful Jewish-Russian immigrant, had made his mark in Wall Street's financial world, notably founding Lehman Brothers. In addition, Sachs served as an economic advisor to Roosevelt, and he happened to be a fellow member of the Zionist Organization of America, together with Szilard. After being informed of the physicist's plan, Sachs agreed to act as the courier, personally delivering the all-important letter to Roosevelt. Without Sachs's intervention, this critical piece of correspondence may never have reached the president's desk, or even if it did, it might not have been taken seriously. The successful delivery of this letter by Sachs became a pivotal moment in the history of warfare and technological development. In October 1939, a month after World War II started, Sachs got his chance to deliver the crucial letter to Roosevelt. However, the physics-heavy language didn't capture the president's interest. Spotting this, Sachs quickly spun a historical tale. He narrated the story of Robert Fulton, inventor of the steamboat in 1803, who had unsuccessfully tried to win Napoleon's backing to beat the British Navy with his invention. Sachs compared the atomic bomb to Fulton's steamboat, a revolutionary technology that should not be overlooked. Sachs's tale struck a chord with Roosevelt, who swiftly penned a reply to Einstein. However, the immediate outcome was less than dramatic. The U.S. government didn't kick off the atomic bomb project right away. Instead, Roosevelt's letter pointed to forming a committee to delve into nuclear matters. Soon, the U.S. government held a meeting with Szilard, Wigner, and Taylor. Einstein somehow declined the invite. By November, the committee reported to Roosevelt that a uranium-based bomb could far surpass existing weapons in destructiveness. Still, the U.S. wasn't quite ready to jump into atomic bomb development as they were yet to join the war. The key progress in the following months was Szilard's work. In 1940, Szilard used his connections to secure a $6,000 grant from the U.S. Navy, primarily used for buying graphite. With enough resources, Fermi set to work on America's first small nuclear reactor, a significant step towards an atomic bomb. Post the 1941 Pearl Harbor attack, this reactor project moved to a gym basement at the University of Chicago and became a top priority national project. Szilard played a key role in the early stages of the atomic bomb project, acting as the glue holding everything together. As the U.S. joined World War II and more European scientists came on board, Szilard effectively coordinated research efforts, navigating unfamiliar American systems and ensuring adequate resources. Szilard also led the nuclear reactor lab set up by Fermi at the University of Chicago. Post-war, many scientists agreed that, without Szilard, the atomic bomb development might still have happened, but likely with substantial delays. Of course, the underground lab at Chicago University was never enough for the development of an atomic bomb. Indeed, as of late 1940, the U.S. lagged behind the UK and Germany in nuclear weapon research. This wasn't a lack of capability, but because the U.S. was yet to commit to that. The turning point came in June 1941, following the breakdown of the Japan-U.S. relationship. This shock spurred the U.S. government into action, leading to the establishment of the Office of Scientific Research and Development just a week later. The shadowy institute had near unlimited resources under the watch of President Roosevelt, and it was headed by none other than Vannevar Bush. And no, not that Bush family. Vannevar Bush, arguably the most significant contributor to scientific research in U.S. history, made his mark in ways that even two presidencies couldn't. The impact he had on American science was truly unparalleled. Vannevar, MIT-trained, founder of the world's fifth largest defense contractor, Raytheon, and President Roosevelt's science advisor. He was the natural choice to head up the newly formed Office of Scientific Research and Development in 1941. Vannevar had a clear understanding of technological trends, and under his watch, Roosevelt gave the green light to atomic bomb research. To oversee this, a decision-making group was set up, including Vice President Wallace, Secretary of War Henry Stimson, Chief of Staff George Marshall, and, of course, Vannevar himself. The Manhattan Project, as it came to be known due to its Army Corps of Engineers Manhattan office, was led by General Leslie Groves, the man building the Pentagon at the time. The first critical task? Producing the nuclear material for the bomb. The chosen element, uranium. Specifically, isotope U-235, which only accounted for a tiny 0.7% of natural uranium. Enriching it was the first big challenge. The team also decided to produce plutonium, a task that only a wealthy nation like the U.S. could undertake. Initially, the project had a mere $6,000 budget, dwarfed by Germany's funding. However, once Roosevelt approved, the U.S. allocated a whopping $2 billion, equivalent to $25 billion today. Compared to the overall cost of World War II, this was a drop in the ocean, 9 days of war expenditure. But it resulted in 4 atomic bombs, 3 national labs, and thousands of patents, a very profitable trade. Yet, the Manhattan Project was a significant investment, even exceeding the total aid given to China during World War II. Let's dive into the enormity of the Manhattan Project's investment. Back in the 1940s, before officially entering the war, Japan's annual military expenditure totaled about $2 billion. Stack that up against the budget of the Manhattan Project alone, and it starts to make sense why Japan's defeat was all but inevitable. Take Nazi Germany as another example. Throughout World War II, Germany invested about 8 million marks in technology and research, equivalent to under $2 million. This amounts to less than 0.1% of what the Americans poured into the Manhattan Project. When we juxtapose these figures, the magnitude of this expenditure comes into sharp relief. With the military's substantial resources, the U.S. rapidly flipped the script, taking the helm in atomic weapons development. What's the first challenge? Refining raw materials. That called for factory construction, a job that fell to General Leslie Groves. In Tennessee, General Groves pinpointed a barren plot of land where he would construct an enormous factory to refine U-235. Just how huge? 40 square kilometers, to be precise. This site would later morph into the Oak Ridge National Laboratory. Remember the plan to produce 2 types of raw materials in tandem? In Washington's Hanford, General Groves founded another vast factory dedicated to plutonium production. This location would subsequently become the Pacific Northwest National Laboratory. With these measures, the raw materials problem was largely put to bed. But raw materials alone wouldn't build the bomb. The project needed a leader to unify a team of world-class scientists, many of whom had colossal egos matching their intellectual prowess. Choosing such a person was a daunting task. Someone like Einstein, despite his renown, might not have been able to command respect from all, not to mention his lack of management skills. In a surprising move, General Groves picked J. Robert Oppenheimer. The guy was sometimes called Oppie by his close associates. He was under 40, and without a Nobel Prize, not your typical leadership candidate for a project of this magnitude. So, why him? Oppie was a marvel in physics. He calculated the critical mass needed for a nuclear chain reaction just with pen and paper. His numbers, verified later, were incredibly accurate. Furthermore, his fluency in 8 languages enabled seamless communication with scientists from diverse backgrounds. In essence, General Groves and Genius Oppie, 2 very different men, brought together resources and intellect, setting the stage for one of history's most monumental achievements. So why do I still say this was a surprising decision? Because Oppie was too young and lacked specific managerial experience. Who knew if he could lead a team? After all, a young genius can be very useful when working alone, but leading a team could ruin everything. There are too many such cases. Worse, The military intelligence department showed that he had obvious communist tendencies. His brother and ex-girlfriend were both Communist Party members. Even though the Second World War was still raging, and the United States and the Soviet Union were allies, having communist affiliations was not too reprehensible. However, the Manhattan Project was top secret. Even Vice President Truman was not aware of it before he took office. What was the actual situation? Can someone who might be a communist be put in charge? If it were anyone else, they might have overlooked Oppie. After all, the United States is so big and there is no shortage of talent. There is no need to bet on someone politically unreliable. Later events proved that Grove's choice was correct. Oppenheimer, despite his youth and lack of management experience, was a true genius in every sense. He applied systematic engineering management methods that significantly shortened the project timeline, completed the complex task of building an atomic bomb in just 3 short years. Not everyone could have achieved this. But don't think this support from Groves was easily given, since Oppie was an audacious genius. Halfway through the Manhattan Project, he ran off to meet his ex-girlfriend, who was a communist. This alarmed the Federal Bureau of Investigation, prompting an immediate report. If it wasn't for Groves' strong support, Oppie might have had to go home. Another surprising episode involves General Groves' unconventional problem-solving. The construction of a large cyclotron needed a magnetic field, requiring a large amount of copper. But with copper reserves focused on military production, a scientist suggested silver as an alternative. The response from Groves was decisively affirmative. With this, Groves sent his assistant Nicholas to the Treasury Department to borrow silver, emphasizing its importance to the war effort. Stunned, the Treasury asked how much they needed. Nicholas' response? 6,000 tons. Deputy Minister Bell, taken aback, responded, "Young man, you should know that the Treasury measures silver in ounces, not tons." But Groves persisted, and in the end, the Treasury agreed, lending out an astonishing 14,000 tons of silver to the project, nearly all of which was returned after the war. Now let's shine a spotlight on Genius Oppie's unique abilities. First, he was a true polymath, with expert knowledge in chemistry, metallurgy, weapons production, and engineering manufacturing, all key components in atomic bomb creation. This was not a project for specialists. It demanded a generalist approach, integrating all facets to achieve a successful outcome. Second, Oppie was obsessively driven, akin to the archetypical mad scientist from the movies. Coming from immense wealth, he wasn't motivated by a paycheck, but by a deep desire to leave a mark on the world. Finally, Genius Oppie played an integral role in overcoming the manifold technical challenges of the atomic bomb. While General Groves was a brilliant manager, it was Oppie who was the expert in all technical fields. He was omnipresent, from the lab to the conference room, evaluating and deciding on every idea. In essence, he was the primary architect of the atomic bomb. All in all, the project's success can be attributed to Groves' unwavering faith in Genius Oppie and his audacious decision-making. While we only have a limited understanding of the Manhattan Project due to some information still being classified, the stories shared should help clarify who played pivotal roles in the creation of the atomic bomb. So, who built the atomic bomb? It was a collective effort, but 2 men stand out: General Leslie Groves, the project's overseer, and physicist J. Robert Oppenheimer. Groves, initially an outsider to nuclear physics, was the perfect choice for managing this massive military and engineering project. With his vision and leadership, he turned America's abundant resources into an efficient, top-secret bomb-producing machine. In contrast, Genius Oppie, the scientific maestro, led the world's top scientists to design the atomic bomb. In this extraordinary tale, we see how the right people in the right roles can turn the tides of history, shaping the world as we know it today. Of course, the story isn't over yet. How was the atomic bomb successfully tested? And who decided to actually use it? How did it impact the end of World War II? Let's leave these topics for the next story. That's all for this episode. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed it. See you next time. Goodbye.